Welcome to Cherish Ephesians 6:4 and our reading of John Blanchard's wonderful booklet called Jesus, Dead or Alive. And it begins. Some time ago I was having a long conversation with an atheist at the University of Cape Town when I was called away to another engagement. Before leaving, I asked him one last question. What do you think of Jesus Christ? Without a moment's hesitation, he replied, I'm not sure. But I do know this. Everything depends on whether or not he rose from the dead. Although he denied the very existence of God, let alone the Bible's claim that Jesus was God in human flesh and form, he was certain that all questions about the identity, ministry, and relevance of Jesus hinged on another one. After he had been executed, certified dead, then buried, did he come back to life? I could not stay to ask the student how he had come to that conclusion, but he was absolutely right. And his everything covers more than he may have realized. To begin with, the integrity and reliability of the entire New Testament hinge on whether Jesus rose from the dead, because time and time again it says that he did. The writers of over 95% of the New Testament refer to it often, never once as a myth, legend, or theory, but always as a historical event. One of them was a physician called Luke, described by Sir William Ramsay, an original member of the British Academy, as one of the very greatest of historians. In one of his New Testament books, Luke writes, I myself have carefully investigated everything from the beginning, Luke 1:3. And in the other, he speaks of many convincing proofs, Acts 1:3, that Jesus came back from the dead. If Jesus did no such thing, not only was this expert witness mistaken, but the New Testament, which so often repeats the claim, is of no more historical value than a fairy tale. Secondly, if Jesus did not come back to life, he was either a fool or a deluded liar, because he never predicted his death without claiming that he would rise again. For someone to say he was going to die would be to state the obvious, but if he claimed that after being dead and buried, he would come back to life, we would feel he was in need of a good psychiatrist. Yet Jesus not only repeatedly told his followers he would rise again, he even pinpointed how long after his burial this would happen. Even his enemies reported him as saying, After 3 days I will rise, Matthew 27:63. And as we will see later, they persuaded the authorities to take strict security measures to seal this tomb in case his followers stole the body and faked his resurrection. What is more, dismissing Jesus as a fool or a liar clashes with all the records of his life, which reflect his outstanding integrity, goodness, wisdom, and mental balance. Even the British author H.G. Wells, a self-confessed unbeliever, was to admit that in judging a person's greatness by historical standards, Jesus stands first. But did he come back to life after being dead and buried? The best way to begin answering the question is to take a straightforward look at the background to the resurrection story, the Bible's record of the death and burial of Jesus. The record. Although there was not a shred of evidence to back up his accusers' claims, Jesus was charged with a series of crimes ranging from insurrection to blasphemy. After several hearings, he was brought before Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor of Judea, who authorized his crucifixion. Having mocked and flogged him, the Roman soldiers marched Jesus to a place called Golgotha, on the outskirts of Jerusalem, where they crucified him. Crucifixion was a barbaric method of execution forbidden by Jewish law, but practiced by Romans and others, their victims sometimes hanging on a cross for days before dying. Soon after Jesus died, he was buried nearby. The next day, Jewish religious leaders reminded Pilate that Jesus had prophesied that he would rise from the dead in 3 days. To prevent his followers from removing the body, then claiming that Jesus had come back to life, they asked Pilate to provide special security at the tomb. Pilate agreed and ordered a detachment of soldiers to make the tomb as secure as you can, Matthew 27:65. A huge rock was placed over the entrance of the tomb and secured with the governor's seal. A round-the-clock guard was posted to ensure that nobody could tamper with the tomb or its contents. Jesus died at about 3 p.m. on a Friday, and his devout Jewish followers would have made sure that he was buried before 6 p.m., when the Jewish Sabbath began. On the Sunday morning, the day after the Sabbath, 3 women, 2 called Mary and the other called Salome, went to the tomb. When they arrived, there was no guard. The seal was broken, and the rock had been removed. Understandably, they were terrified. But suddenly an angel appeared and said, "Do not be afraid, for I know you seek Jesus who was crucified. He is not here, for he has risen, as he said. Come see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples that he is risen from the dead." Matthew 28:5. On their way back to the city, Jesus appeared to them and said, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee, and there they will see me." Matthew 28:10.